Hi everyone, my name is Heather Scalzo. For this project, I built a cross-border data access compliance dashboard, as you can see by the title right here. This is a prototype, so it's all simulated data, but the idea is to show how cloud security teams actually think about compliance risk when data crosses borders, especially between the US, the EU, and Switzerland. I wanted this to line up really closely with what we've been learning in cloud security and also with GRC concepts, because that's the area I'm really interested in going into. One thing I've noticed with cloud security is that the hard part isn't always how to secure something, it's figuring out what laws apply. A workload might run in one country, store data somewhere else, and be accessed globally. And once that happens, you start dealing with things like GDPR, Swiss regulations, and US differences. So the goal of this dashboard is basically to answer, where is my data? What kind of data is it? Does it cross borders? And how risky is that? On the left side, these are the filters, and this is something I really wanted to include because this is how compliance teams actually work. First is the cloud provider, which I included AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. I picked these because these are the three main cloud providers, and each one has different compliance tooling and different regional coverage. Then we have region. EU is European Union, US is United States, and CH is Switzerland. Switzerland is really interesting because even though it's not in the EU, it has very strict financial and data protection laws, which is why I included it. Then there's data type. I put here PII, which is personally identifiable information, sensitive financial data like trading or transaction data, telemetry, which people usually think is harmless, but under GDPR, it can still count as personal data. And finally, the risk score slider, it lets you focus on only higher risk workloads, which is realistically how teams prioritize what to look for, like what to look at first. And as you can see, it changes how many workloads there are depending on how high you put the risk score at. At the top, this just gives us a quick summary, how many workloads there are, the average risk score, how many involve cross-border transfers, and how many are flagged as high risk. This part I included more for like leadership or C-suite type people because it's just for people who want a quick snapshot without all the details, just want to check and see what they have going on and then work from there instead of looking like at the nitty-gritty details. And this is just a workloads overview, helpful as well for people who just are higher up in the chain of business and only really need to see just quick data on it and not really just all the details for it. If they wanted more details on it where they're like, oh man, I don't know what customer onboarding API is, they can go on the side and it shows just some quick notes on it where GDPR, that's where it applies and it handles customer identity data. Just kind of helps people figure out what region they have to keep in mind and where its residency is and what kind of data type it is and if it's cross-border. It just also shows like the kind of risk scores that I put based on like encryption at rest, if it has encryption at rest, and MFA, and if it logs the data as well. And down here, we have different workloads on here that you can select. For the first one, customer onboarding API, this one basically handles, and you can also look down here for a risk explanation, basically for why the risk score is what it is. For customer onboarding API, it handles customer data whenever someone signs up, It's running in AWS, it's in the EU, and it processes PII, so GDPR definitely applies. The risk score here is 60, which I'd call about medium. The data stays in the EU, and things like MFA and logging are enabled, which is good, but it's not perfect, so it's not low risk either. For the next one, we have trading analytics batch, and as you can see, it changed here. This one is much higher risk, as you can see from the risk score. This one handles sensitive financial data, and there's cross-border access involved. Because of that, the risk score jumps to 85. This is the kind of workload where compliance teams would immediately just want some type of legal review, I would say, some type of encryption validation, very clear documentation. Especially in finance, for this kind of workload, this would be a big deal. And that's another reason why I included Switzerland into the mix, because I figured that they have a really good financial data protection laws, and that would kind of help. This is more of a US workload, but it would help them kind of figure out where to go with their data and what to do to keep it safe. For the next one, we have HR document repository, and this one is actually lower risk, 40 right there. It stores HR documents in Switzerland, and the data doesn't leave Switzerland. The fact that the data stays where it is, data residency and the region match and all that, the risk score is 40. Even though HR data is sensitive, keeping it in country makes compliance much easier. And the last one is the worst one in terms of risk score. Not that it's bad, but there is just a much higher risk. Literally the highest risk I could possibly put, I put for that one. Mobile app telemetry. It sounds harmless, but under GDPR, telemetry can still be personal data if it can be linked back to a user. It's basically for like devices. It's not really like PII necessarily, but it still includes data that you like underestimate. You're like, nobody can trace me back with this kind of data, but people really can. Somehow they will. This workload collects a lot of data, just like I was saying, and potentially across regions and at a very large scale. That's the other reason why I gave it a risk score of 100, because you just take so much data and it can be transferred from different countries to other ones, so it's just a lot higher risk. It just shows how things that feel low risk, like technically, can actually be a high risk legally. One thing you'll probably notice is that encryption in transit, it is marked as disabled for all workloads or like not checked off. And that's on purpose. In real GRC work, findings aren't this is broken. They're more like we haven't validated this yet. We don't know if this has encryption in transit. So this simulates a situation where encryption might exist, but there's no confirmed evidence yet that it works with encryption in transit, which it still counts as a compliance issue, but I think I was more so making a point that this is a simulation, and if everything were perfect, then this would be checked off. But these things could be completely different in the real world, and I kind of wanted to make the simulation as realistic as I could in some way right here. So that's why I left it like this, and that's why all of them were disabled for this. Overall, this dashboard just shows how cloud security isn't just technical, it's legal, regional, and risk-based. This kind of tool wouldn't replace legal review, but it just would help teams prioritize risk, which is what GRC is really about. Thank you, and bye.